Recording is on.
All right, welcome. This is the first in a series of workshops that we're doing for accessibility and universal design in Bitcoin applications. And we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the ways that improving accessibility in Bitcoin can actually help improve the UX and help improve just a general adoption and security and other measures related to Bitcoin projects. So let me go ahead and share my screen. We have a presentation. Should last about 15 minutes. We have a video that John is going to do a screen reader demo. And then we have a little bit of time at the end where V is going to walk us through her color contrast presentation. And then finally, we'll have some time for questions and Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and present. Let me go ahead and switch my windows over here. Let me know if you cannot see this. Should be up. Oh, hold on a second. Let me try it again. Well, let's try a different method. Here we go. Interesting. So it's not showing up in Canva. Let me just open it up in a browser. That may help. Okay. So I can share this screen here. Screen sharing failed. Wonderful. I'll tell you what. Let me just go ahead and try this one more time.
Is it a browser setting or something?
I'm not sure. Just keep saying screen sharing failed.
Yeah, super helpful error messages.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. I see something coming.
There we go. Cool. Awesome. All right. Sorry for the delay there. So this talk is titled Designing for the Edges, Accessibility Resources for Designers and Developers.
Hey,
my name is Jason.
Sorry, Jason. To me, it's completely black, the screen. How is it for everyone else? Yeah, here we go. Now I see it. Okay, awesome.
Okay, yeah, I think it just takes a couple seconds.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Sorry.
Yeah, so my name is Jason Hester. I'm contributing to the Bitcoin design community, trying to help out with some of the accessibility efforts here. I've been in accessibility for about 15 years now, and I've worked with a colleague, John Herzog, who's also on the call, who's going to be talking about how he uses a screen reader. This is a really kind of a high-level overview of accessibility. We will have some workshops that are going into more detail on Global Accessibility Awareness Day, which is May 15th. So just to kind of get us started here, next slide. So our goals are to understand how accessibility improves usability, learn some common disability types and assistive technologies, explore the basic methods to testing Bitcoin apps, both on desktop and mobile, and then we'll have a resource guide at the end for the Designathon and the Hackathon. So this is a core heuristic that I've held for many years. I've held it since my days in college when I was first introduced to usability and interaction design. And that is that catering to the extremes in human variation can and often does improve usability for the average user. Now that's actually been proven over time in my career, but also there's a lot of research that's come out about the curb cut effect, which is a very similar concept, which is essentially that when you provide affordances for use cases that have constraints, oftentimes you end up creating an effect that is better for the overall usability of your application or your design. So this heuristic is part of the universal design and human factors, and it's especially relevant in high stakes, irreversible systems like Bitcoin. Initially, before I got into design or into interaction design and accessibility, I was actually in the Navy, and we worked on a lot of very critical systems there, and that's really sparked my interest in critical systems and usability of those critical systems. And I think Bitcoin is one of those types of technologies because it's very important for many things in the world. So a little bit about the context. High friction equals high risk. If you have poor UX, it can make security and privacy completely unusable. One mistake can cost everything, and we're leaving folks out if we're not designing for accessibility. We're leaving out older adults, people in the global south that might not have stable interconnections, people with disabilities. So bad or boating accidents can happen with bad UX, so we want to avoid those. So why does this matter for Bitcoin? So some key aspects of an inclusive Bitcoin design are making Bitcoin usable for all, right? If we want this to be global money that's adopted by the world, it needs to be accessible. People with disabilities need to be able to use this, and it needs to be very easy for the average person. Accessibility helps prevent irreversible errors. So serious errors caused by common issues like unlabeled buttons and forms. We've done a lot of research, or at least this team has done some research on Bitcoin wallets. And I've been looking at Bitcoin wallets since I got into the space in 2013. And I can tell you that a majority of the Bitcoin wallets have very serious accessibility barriers that will completely prevent a blind user from being able to access and use those applications. Accessible design is resilient design. So tools that work across diverse abilities, devices, and environments are often more robust and reliable in general. So another reason that accessibility is important to Bitcoin is Hal Finney, one of the first adopters of Bitcoin, first early adopters. He had a disability as well. He had ALS, which is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. He was diagnosed in 2009. And this is a very debilitating disease, which affects motor functionality progressively. And unfortunately, it is a fatal disease. But he continued working on Bitcoin despite this diagnosis. And he wrote about his use of assistive technology in an article called Bitcoin and Me, which I highly recommend you take a look at. And we have some resources at the end that will provide that long quote. So what are some of the different disability categories that we need to design for? So we want to be thinking about visual. That's really top of the mind. It's very easy to conceive. But aside from blindness, there's low vision. So folks that may have macular degeneration, or they may have color blindness, or they may have some other vision issues which require them to use screen magnifiers and things like that. Then we have cognitive and neuro disabilities. So things like ADHD, dyslexia, autism, memory issues. That's a huge one. I've done some testing with folks with memory issues, and it's very interesting because sometimes those memory issues, can cause somebody to not have short-term memory that lasts more than, like, say, 5 to 10 seconds. And so if you have a design that is taking longer than that to figure out, that user will kind of have a reset and then need to go back and remember what they were doing and go back through the steps they've already gone through. And it can be a very big barrier for those people. Other ones are auditory, so deafness and hard of hearing. So you want to make sure you have captions for videos and things like that. Then there's temporary environmental disabilities, broken arm, a noisy cafe, bright sunlight with your mobile phone. I like to say that if we all live long enough, we're going to experience some form of disability. And I think the Bitcoin design community has provided some good resources on that as well that show that 15% of all people in the world have some form of disability, right? And the older you get, the more likely that is to happen. And then there's motor disabilities, like the one that Hal Finney had, ALS. limited mobility, there's tremors, there's paralysis. So those folks need to use keyboard and switch only type controls. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a moment. So some assistive technologies you should know. There's screen readers. So there's VoiceOver and NVDA, and those two are two that we're going to be going over today. VoiceOver is on iOS. NVDA is on Windows desktop. NVDA is actually a free open source screen reader. And then there's TalkBack for Android. And we have screen magnifiers, which will enhance will magnify the screen essentially. You want to make sure that things are visible at 200% and then at 400% respectively. We have switch controls and alternative input devices. So I have a picture of a braille display on the bottom right. And this is something that a lot of blind users will use, but not all blind users will use. So it's something to consider when designing your application. You want to make sure that it's available to any kind of input device that might be plugged into the computer, over Bluetooth, etc.
Generally speaking too, Jason, if it works with the screen reader, then it's going to be the output from the screen reader can easily be translated into Braille.
Right. Excellent. And then we have captions and transcripts. So I'm going to move on a little bit quickly here so that we can get through everything and get to the videos. But yeah, we have the WCAG core principles. So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.2 is probably the de facto global internet standard for accessibility. It is the most widely referenced and used resource related to accessibility, and it defines 4 main principles. The applications must be perceivable, they must be operable, understandable, and robust. So perceivable just means information user interface components are presented to users in ways that they can perceive, right? So if you need an alternate format, we need to provide multimodal formats for all users, right? So not just audible, not just visual, but spatial and haptic and other means of providing that same information, right? Is it operable? Is the UI component operable by all users? So can you use it with a keyboard? Can you use it with a screen reader? Is it a seizure-safe design, meaning do you have a lot of flashing going on in your design that could cause a seizure? Those are things to look out for. And then also, clear wayfinding throughout your application, being able to know where you're at in a particular flow is very helpful. Then understandable information and operation of the user interface must be understandable, such as readability. You want it to be predictable, and you want to help users avoid mistakes. So this is very critical in Bitcoin apps, obviously. And then robust just means content must work reliably with current and future user agents, assistive technologies, basically using clean, standards compliant code. So that will ensure that your application is used by folks that maybe have an older device or slower internet connections, or maybe using a different browser screen reader combination. So those are things to consider. Those are the main points. So we have this screenshot from the Bitcoin Design Guide, which is very useful. It shows a mobile app with a payment request on it. And there's a bunch of labels for all of the different buttons and controls and images on this screen. And this is what's going to be read out by the screen reader. So you want to make sure when you're testing Bitcoin apps that you have sufficient contrast. Essentially, that's 4.5 to 1 contrast for a very general rule of thumb for text elements. And then meaningful UI elements, that would be a 3 to 1 contrast ratio as a rule of thumb as well. This is coming from the WCAG standard. There's other standards out there that have a slightly different take on it, but essentially they're pretty close. You also want to make sure you have large touch targets. You want to make sure that you're using at least 24 by 24 px size for the touchable area, the tappable area. It doesn't have to be the size of the entire control. It doesn't have to be framed that way. But you should be able to tap, on the back button or next to the done button and have a little bit of affordance there and make sure that you still activate the control. You want to have descriptive labels for controls and alerts. You want to have status messages for screen reader users. You want to ensure that text alternatives for QR codes and images are present. Otherwise, the screen reader user is not going to know it's even there. And you want to make sure you have screen reader friendly recovery flows with clear instructions. So here's a table which describes some of the edge cases and how they can help everyone. So we have a list of accessibility features, who it helps first, and how it helps everyone. So things like captions and transcripts, they're going to be helpful for deaf and hard of hearing users. It's going to be especially important, though, for all users in quiet or noisy environments. And it's also going to help with faster information parsing. So, for example, if somebody is trying to watch a video about how to install a Bitcoin wallet while they're at work, they might not want their coworkers to hear what they're listening to. So that's something that benefits everyone. Voice control and keyboard navigation. So this goes into the alternate inputs. This helps folks with limited mobility. So with voice control, you have this hands-free convenience. And with keyboard functionality, you have power user efficiency. So your power users may be able to use your application more quickly and effectively if you have the appropriate keys enabled for them to use the tool in a predictable manner. We have high contrast in text size. So that's going to be important for vision impairments. As we mentioned earlier, though, sunlight use, aging eyes, general readability. Simple UI and terminology. Cognitive impairments is who that helps. That reduces mistakes and speeds up onboarding for everybody. We also want to look at colorblind friendly design. It's going to help colorblind users, but it's going to make it more distinguishable for everybody. Larger tap targets and gestures, which we already talked about, and offline and low bandwidth support, which we already touched on as well. So it's my view that if we make applications accessible, it actually does improve the security. So if we're using clear language, we're going to have fewer irreversible errors. If we're trying to design a backup for a wallet, potentially, you might want to use visual devices such as QR codes for backup, or even diagrams that show the layout of the backup and how it works and kind of remind you of how that works. We have verbal options such as mnemonic seed keys. And then there's other things that we can do like multi-device or multi-sig. We can use NFC, and we can also do biometrics as well. But I think thinking about the different use cases and the edges of the use cases and applying those things is going to be very helpful for all users, not just cypherpunk Bitcoiners. So human proof of defaults. We have less address reuse, metadata data exposure, etc. So, if we make it private and easy to use by default, it's going to help everyone. And then testing with edge users. A lot of times in my testing in the past, especially when testing with people with disabilities, I found critical flaws in lots of software that affect all users, but we didn't find it until we had that edge case, right? So it kind of forces the issue to appear. So it's very helpful in interaction design to kind of force those issues to come to the surface. Okay, so mobile accessibility testing checklist. So some things you want to do is enable voiceover for iOS or talkback for Android. And then you want to test the navigation, labeling, screen reader order, and reading order with a screen reader. You want to navigate without touch gestures, so using keyboard shortcuts, for example, using external switch controls, or you can just use a keyboard, and that will simulate a switch control as well in a lot of ways. Voice commands, non-touch interactions. You want to check color contrast. We have lots of color contrast checkers available for WCAG 2.2 and OPCA, which we'll talk about later. You want to zoom the display to at least 200% and make sure that the UI remains usable and intact when you do that. Alternatively, you want to zoom into 400% as well and make sure everything reflows appropriately. You want to turn on grayscale and colorblind modes, simulate colorblindness to make sure that you can understand the interface So if you have any color coding, for example, like green means good in this image that we have here of Zeus Wallet. The fact that they have the text on top of the green is a fallback, right? So if you're colorblind and you only see the grayscale, you would still know that it's good, right? We want to enlarge large text settings, enable large text settings. So increasing font sizes on iOS. In Mac, there's dynamic type, which you would want to ensure is enabled. And there's some specific settings that you need to do in your application to get that to work sometimes. And then you want to use voice only controls. So there's voice control on iOS, which is built into the accessibility settings, and voice access on Android, some versions of Android, which will allow you to navigate via dictation. So how to set up voiceover in iOS. We have some instructions here. It's really simple. I got a couple screenshots. You go to settings, accessibility, voiceover, and then alternatively, there's an optional tool you can turn on called live recognition, and this is an AI tool. John will talk about this in a moment, but we generally don't want to rely on AI tools because not all users are going to know how to turn them on, and they're not always reliable. For setting up TalkBack on Android, you go to Settings, Accessibility, TalkBack, and then you want to toggle Use TalkBack and the TalkBack shortcut, which is very helpful. Basically, it provides a list of icons on the side of your screen that you can tap on really quickly to turn on the screen reader and turn it off. So if you turn on your screen reader and you can't figure out how to turn it off, it's easier to do when you have the TalkBack shortcut enabled. All right, so we have a bunch of tools and resources. I'm adding to this document as I go, but I've created this Bitcoin accessibility guide, and it's at github.io/Bitcoin-universal-design. We have a QR code on the screen if you want to take a screenshot of that, or you want to go directly to it. And yeah, please feel free to comment and add any feedback that you have on that. And if you see any tools that we should add or any other additional resources that you think should be included, please feel free to do that. So without further ado, we'll go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is John Herzog, and I'm going to be doing a demonstration of how the NVDA screen reader on Windows works with a Bitcoin wallet called Sparrow. Now, this demo is great because we have here by hitting enter.
Sorry. I just want to pause real fast, make sure that everyone can hear that.
Yes.
Good.
Demonstration of how the NVDA screen reader on Windows works with a Bitcoin wallet called Sparrow. Now, this demo is great because we have some areas where the screen reader does exactly what you would expect it to do and reads well, and other areas where it definitely could use improvement. I hope this is helpful for you as you consider accessibility in your Bitcoin projects throughout this developer conference. So without further ado, I am just running a standard Windows 11 computer here. I'm on my desktop, and I'm going to launch Sparrow for the first time here. So here we go.
Sparrow, File Explorer. Sparrow.
I have the standalone version, so I'm going to launch Sparrow here by hitting enter.
Dialog. Welcome to Sparrow. Introduction. Sparrow is a Bitcoin wallet with a focus on security and usability. Sparrow can operate in both an online and offline mode. In the online mode, it connects to a server to display transaction history. In the offline mode, it is useful as a transaction editor and as an air-gapped multisig coordinator. The status bar at the bottom displays the connection status, as demonstrated below. Offline. Next button.
You can tell in this dialogue, the screen reader spoke all of the welcome material. This is good. This is what we want, because this is an introduction screen that tells the user about the program. Now, it may not always be good for a screen reader to speak every possible thing on screen, but we'll get more into that later. I'm going to hit the next button here. Now, this is the first of our areas that could be improved. When I hit the enter button, I didn't hear anything from the screen reader. At a minimum, we want to hear that something has happened. So we want to either hear the screen title or preferably in this case, we'd want to hear more instructions that appear about connecting to a server. Now, since the screen reader didn't read anything, I have to use navigation commands for our NVDA. These are intermediate to advanced commands, and so ideally, when a user is first getting acclimated to a new program like this, we don't want them also to have to try and use advanced navigation commands for their screen reader to try and figure out what's relevant to them on the screen. Because I'm in laptop mode, I'm going to use the caps lock, the shift, and the right arrow key to move around. If you're on a desktop, you might have to use your number pad to move between different items on the screen with the NVDA focus. But let's see what it says here.
Welcome to Sparrow. Graphic. Connecting to a public server. If you are beginning your journey in self-custody, or just storing a small amount, the easiest way to connect Sparrow to the Bitcoin blockchain is via one of the pre-configured public Electrum servers. However, although Sparrow only connects to servers that have a record of respecting privacy, it is still not ideal as you are sharing your transaction history and balance with them. A yellow toggle means you are connected to a public server. Connected to a public server, demonstration only.
And it seems to read everything, so I'm going to hit the next button. And for the purposes of this recording, I'm going to hit the offline mode toggle. So I'm going to click next. Now, this is interesting because when I hit the tab key the first time, I heard nothing. Hit the tab again, I heard nothing.
Back button.
Back button.
Next button.
You don't want to have unlabeled elements on screen or times when the screen reader says nothing, because it gives me the impression as a blind user that nothing is happening. All right, I've clicked next, but I don't know that anything has actually happened because the screen reader hasn't said anything. At a minimum, it should speak the name of the control that has received focus. I know from previous demos of this software that this is the screen where I can choose online or offline mode.
Back button. Next button.
Oh no, I didn't have the next button even focused.
Back button.
Hold on.
Next button.
There we go.
Later or offline mode button.
I'm going to choose later or offline mode. I'm going to hit enter there.
Sparrow. File. Sparrow window. New wallet link.
Okay, and now I'm going to go into the import wallet option because I want to give a little bit of a demo. I'm also going to slow the speech down just a touch here.
Rate 24. Rate 19.
There we go. I'm going to go into the import wallet window here.
Open wallet link. Import wallet link.
Going to hit enter there.
Dialog. Dialog mnemonic words. BIP39. Seed import details. BSMS wallet import details. Blue wallet vault multisig wallet import details. Cold card wallet import details. Cold card multisig wallet import details. Electrum wallet import details.
Okay, I'm going to silence the screen reader with the control key, but in this case, you'll notice that it starts to read every single available option on screen. This is not what we want because although the options are available, I'm not focused on any of them, and it doesn't help me to hear every single thing that's... Uh-oh. Jason?
Sorry about that. Is everyone able to hear it? Sorry. There's no pause on
Jason,
camera.
the last thing that I think I heard was I was silencing the screen reader with the control key, and then
Okay.
it went dead after that.
Let's go back there. Can you hear now?
No.
All right, sorry about that. So the rest of that video we can watch offline, I suppose, since it's not working for the rest of the presentation. There's some really good information in there, though, about how when John is navigating through the seed order list, it's not announcing which control that he's on or which number of seed word that he's on. And he also has some information about mobile accessibility testing towards the end. And I apologize. I'm not sure why the audio just stopped working on me. Anybody have any clue?
Jason, what happens if you stop sharing screen and then start sharing screen again and choose the audio option?
Yeah, let's try that. Okay. Okay, you can see it, correct? Let's go forward. How about now?
No, I don't hear it.
Nothing?
No.
All right, that's really unfortunate. Um, all right, I apologize for that. Not sure why my screen share just stopped working on me. Yeah, so Christoph mentioned, yeah, he just recommends testing with the screen reader on your phone and trying out some of your favorite apps with your eyes closed. It does give you a good sensitivity for what it's like to navigate without any visual context, right? So one thing about navigating with a screen reader is that it's very time sensitive, right? You have to listen to the entire page in order to get the context for the entire page, or you need to have some semantic markup built into the page that is going to allow you to quickly and easily discern the basic heading structure, for example, where some lists might be, where the navigational elements are, things like that, right? So building that into your application in advance will make it much easier for screen reader users to quickly orient themselves to the screen and navigate the application. John, is there anything you wanted to add there? I'm not sure why this is not working, but
Maybe we can post it to YouTube or something, Jason. Give people a link where they can
sure.
get to the video. I did want to briefly touch on a point that you made earlier. First of all, when you do test on mobile, make sure that you are aware that the gestures change. A lot of people try tapping on things and they wonder why it doesn't work when the screen reader's on. You remember that if you want to hear what your finger is on, you tap the item once. If you want to activate it, you double tap it. So you just want to make sure that you double tap on things to activate them. And one other point that I did make in the video is you want to be sure that each object is in the swipe order. So what that means is as you swipe your finger from left to right, you move sequentially from left to right, top to bottom across all the items. What you don't want to see is you don't want to see there'll be a little box that highlights where focus is. You don't want to see that jumping around in different areas of the screen from one swipe to the next. The other point I briefly made in the video is Jason touched on this a little bit earlier, but there are options, especially in voice in iOS, called screen recognition and text recognition. What these do, they aim to use the neural processing unit on the device in order to try and figure out and fill in some of the gaps where things are not accessible, and they try and guess where the buttons are or guess you know what the next thing in focus should be. My point is simply that if you test with screen recognition on, you've missed the point because accessibility should stand on its own merit and it should not need AI features or screen recognition because all that's doing is filling in areas where developers have failed to check that accessibility was working properly in the first place. It's also tricky because even if a user turns those features on in VoiceOver, they have to turn them on for specific apps. So they need to use another finger gesture to turn that on, even if they enable that option in the options dialog or in the settings dialog to begin with.
Live recognition is the setting he's talking about here. So that's the one that uses AI to kind of guess at what might be on the screen, right? And it's very useful for some users, but
well, and in full disclosure, I use it.
Yeah.
I mean, in full disclosure, I use this because of the reality that apps are not always tested for accessibility. But you know, in Bitcoin especially, you want to build trust and rapport with your users. You want to make sure that the users can trust your application and that what they're hearing is accurate, as opposed to just what a computer is guessing should be there.
Very good. All right, so that was essentially what John's talk included towards the end. We'll go ahead and provide that video in a link for everybody later. I apologize for that not playing all the way. But some final thoughts here. Just a couple of quick slogans to remember. Solve for one, extend to many. It's a very simple and easy way to think about things. And I think, designing for the edges helps strengthen the core. That's another good mental model to hold. So if you want to reach out to us anytime during this Designathon or the hackathon, feel free to reach out on Discord at John J. Herzog or Jason Bits. And I'm on GitHub. I'm also running an account called Decentralize on X and Nostr, talking specifically about these types of issues in regard to free open source software and Bitcoin. So we have a little bit of time left, and I want to give V a chance to share her slides. So V, do you want to go ahead and take it over?
You can hear me, right?
I can hear you.
Yep.
Yes.
So my slides are basically on a small concept, color contrast that Jason has already talked about. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, what is color contrast? It's a simple concept which I think has a huge impact on accessibility. It is about making sure that the text and essential elements are readable against the background, especially for people with low vision or color blindness. So how do we know what needs good contrast and what doesn't? So that's what we'll explore. So this is a definition, like a ratio of contrast between things to be accessible. There should be an adequate contrast between the color of a piece of information in the foreground and the color of its background. So the ratio we are talking about here is 4.5:1, as already told. And yeah, so how to know? The color so how to know what needs color contrast. So we divide the elements into two categories. On the left is we have information bearing elements, and second is decorative and disabled elements. Information bearing elements, these are things that the user needs to understand in one instance and act on it. So these includes plain text, images of texts like button with stylized fonts, and standalone icons. These basically convey meaning without the label. So like the profile icon as shown, or the trash can icons, any icons as well. And so these are the elements that must need that must meet color contrast standards. And if the user can't see these clearly, they will miss the critical information that we are trying to show. Second, on the right is decorative and disabled elements. So if a user can't see these clearly, sorry, it's not important. Uh, these contains disabled elements, artistic borders, and background patterns, and logos, as logos follow their specific brand guidelines, so we can't change their colors according to the color contrast. Also the photos. So until and unless it's very important, the text that's on the photographs, we don't need to meet the color contrast in this. And especially for me, I think that being a designer, even a disabled button or a disabled element can be color contrasted, uh, because it's there for a reason that it's disabled, and not just we haven't just it's not, or we can just have take it off the design. So that's my personal uh, thing. And
Yeah. So recap here: information bearing elements need to meet the 3:1 contrast ratio, and decorative and disabled elements should meet do not need to meet any contrast. Right? Yeah. Excellent.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, the exceptions we talked about was the larger text and graphical objects and UI controls. And now, yeah, so understanding the contrast, uh, as there are these four uh, quadrants. So on top left, we have contrast, that's black on yellow. This is a good example. And for high visibility, we have white on navy. It's clean, sharp, and it's, excellent legibility. And now if we look at bottom, we have low visibility. That's the colors like green over blue over green. So these have kind of similar brightness. So the text kind of blends in. So the people with vision impairments might miss this completely. And on the bottom right, it's vibrates, that's green on red, even though there's a contrast, but the color clashes, and it puts strains on the eye. So for especially for colorblind users, this will create a vibrating effect, even for us. So it's very uncomfortable to read. So not all contrasts are a good contrast. Uh, so yeah, the tools. One of the tool is WebAIM. So here you can check your color contrast very easily, putting in the foreground color and the background color, and making sure it's above 4.5. Next topic is color independence. So this is basically the color should not be used as the only medium to convey information or indicate an action, prompting or a response, or distinguish a visual element according to the web guidelines. Uh, Also, this should not discourage color coding. We can use them as redundant visual cues. So, how to achieve color independence? We'll go through some examples. Here are the four screens. You can see this is a sign up screen, a landing page, a normal text, and graph. So, how will a colorblind person see it? Is in all grayscale. Uh, so, this is how he'll see. So with the problem with the first slide is you can't really see. So here there was an error. You can't really see that there is an error, right? And for the second screen, the contrast here is really low. Uh, so you can't, like, you'll basically not know on which page you are on. For the third one is just the text, and here we can see that there are links, and here, so they can basically skip what the links are. For the fourth one, the graph, so here the first and the third color looks similar, the fourth and the second color looks similar. So what we can do here simply is for this, we can add an icon. Here, just raising the color contrast. Here, we can use test formatting. That's basically making it bold or light. Also, structural differences such as underlines. And for this, it's basically structural differences. That means, like, some examples for that would be making a dotted line or dashed lines, or using hollow versus solid, or also like underlines. And we can use some patterns, or maybe shapes, some textures. We can use borders and outlines. Oh, so yeah, so this
So
is it.
adding redundant visual cues is very helpful for that.
Sorry?
So yeah, just to sum up, adding redundant visual cues is very helpful for being able
Mm-hmm.
to discern the different elements of the graph, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
the dashed
One of
line versus the dotted line. Yeah.
yeah, one of the example that I can give for text formatting here is I'll share one of my other screens. So that's today that I found out. Uh, just a second. Mm,
One of the things that I don't know if it was mentioned, but make sure too, when you're using color contrast, that color is not the only means of conveying information too. This kind of goes with the providing multiple visual method indicators.
yeah. Uh, can you see my screen?
Cannot.
Hello?
Try to unshare and share one more time. There we go.
Can you see now? Yeah,
Yes.
this is the toolkit. So here there are links that are only separable by distinguished through colors. So yeah, that would be a feedback. Maybe you can add underlines or something to make it more accessible for all. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and that's probably the standard Bitcoin orange color, right? So I would say it's an excellent color. It's a great color. Use it use it wisely though, because it is not the best color to use against a white background. It's very good against dark backgrounds, but against a white background, it doesn't even meet the minimum 3:1 contrast ratio for WCAG. You can look at APCA color contrast guidelines as well, and they have a little bit more affordance for some of those colors. But still, I think if it's not a large enough text and it's not bold enough, the default color for the Bitcoin logo is probably going to be insufficient in most cases. So with that, we got about 10 minutes here. Let's open it up to questions. Anybody have any questions about what we talked about today? So as I mentioned, we're going to have a couple other workshops next week, actually, on the 15th. And on those, I hope to be a little bit more interactive. So I want you to bring questions if you can. And we may look at some personas. I'm not really 100% sure how we're going to do it yet, but I definitely want us to kind of use it more as a jam session, right? Kind of hashing out ideas and thinking about things and how accessibility impacts Bitcoin applications that we currently use. Any questions from anyone? There was another point that John mentioned as well with regards to not using color alone to indicate things, right? So in the example that V showed with the different tabs and the color of the tab was darker and it was a different color if it was selected, right? So if you're using a screen reader you also need to ensure that the selected state of that control is being announced to the screen reader user. So, you know, you can double up your design with redundant visual cues, but you still need to think about users that can't see those visual cues at all, right? So if you style it a certain way, and that increases the visual cue, that's helpful for somebody who's colorblind or has low vision, but you still need to make sure that the underlying code has an already selected attribute, for example, to announce that that is selected to a voiceover user or an NVDA user. We got a few minutes here, so I'll just go ahead and share a little bit about the document, which is the main topic here for this call, because what I want is to give everyone some tools and resources that they can use as they're working through their. Well, let me try to share it again. Sorry, as they're trying to work through their projects. That is hopefully useful. Let me try to share this page directly. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. But yeah, we have a number of resources here in the accessibility guide. A lot of the information that we talked about today is in here, and I've kind of expanded upon it in some areas. We have Halfania's quote from Bitcoin and Me, where he says, I'll just go ahead and read the quote out because I think it's a very, very relevant to our discussion today. He says, "Today I'm essentially paralyzed. I'm fed through a tube and my breathing is assisted through another tube. I operate the computer using a commercial eye tracker system. It also has a speech synthesizer, so this is my voice now. I spend all day in my power wheelchair. I worked up an interface using an Arduino so that I can adjust my wheelchair's position using my eyes. It has been an adjustment, but my life is not too bad. I can still read, listen to music, and watch TV and movies. I recently discovered that I can even write code. It's very slow, probably 50 times slower than I was before. But I still love programming and it gives me goals. Currently, I'm working on something Mike Hearn suggested, using the security features of modern processors designed to support trusted computing, to harden Bitcoin wallets. I'm almost ready to release. I just have to do the documentation. That's my story. I'm pretty lucky overall. Even with ALS, my life is very satisfying, but my life expectancy is limited." So yeah, I think that quote's really resonates with me, and it makes me realize too that a lot of times when we're designing things, or especially in high risk or high stakes applications like Bitcoin, we tend to focus on security and privacy over usability, and we tend to design things for developers, which is great, but we also have developers who do have disabilities as well, and we have some that have actually joined in the hackathon that reached out to me, and so I think it's very important that we think about these things, even if we say, oh, this is just something that we're developing for developers, right? This is just a documentation resource for developers, for example. Let's make that accessible as well, because we want to include those people who are very bright people and allow them to contribute to these projects. So I have some core principles listed here. You can go and dive into perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, and what that means from a WCAG perspective. I have the accessibility features listed again, so you can kind of look through, the ones that we talked about today and how it helps everyone. But then also looking at the specific guidelines we have linked in here for each of these different types of enhancements, right? And this isn't everything. This is not inclusive of all the standard for WCAG guidelines, at least. But it is a lot of the really big, important, low-hanging fruit items that I think we can easily tackle and improve accessibility and usability across the Bitcoin ecosystem dramatically with low effort, right? It's not going to take much for us to get there. I have some more information about cognitive accessibility, motor accessibility, hearing accessibility, situational constraints. This practical examples list, I kind of want to keep building out and provide some actual real examples here in the future. But for now, I just came up with a thought exercise of some different ways that we can start looking at these things. So, recovery options, like I was talking about earlier, the visual backups, providing an accessible QR code, right? So the fact that you provided a QR code is great visually, but, is it also, does the screen reader know it's even there, right? And visual aids, diagrams, right? So is it described properly for screen reader users as well? Does it have proper color contrast and all those things that V mentioned? Otherwise, it may be very difficult to discern, which path I need to take to reconstruct my multi-sig, for example. So that's a lot of the stuff we talked about here. I have a workshop guide. I may change this up here before we do our first couple of workshops and on the 15th. So I'm open to any comments, suggestions, feedback there. And then the resources list is really the most extensive part. It's long and growing, and there's a lot of really good links here, a lot of good links to the standards. So we have WCAG 2.2. We have some key concepts through W3C. The Bitcoin Design Guide has a really great section on accessibility. I highly recommend taking a look at that. I hope to contribute to that soon and expand upon it. Way ARIA 1.2. So ARIA is accessible rich internet applications, and that's what essentially we use for progressive web apps, right? So whenever we're designing components that deviate from standard plain old semantic HTML, we want to use ARIA in order to convey that same semantic meaning to screen reader users. And so that's a very useful standard to look at. There's a lot of really technical information in here. It's good for developers. We have the OPCA, Accessible Perceptual Contrast Algorithm, some information about that and how it's being developed and how it will go into WCAG 3. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, but maybe in the next 3 or 4 years, we might see something. Then there's other standards for the EU. EN 301-549 is the big one for EU accessibility. And then an ISO that I've referenced quite a bit in the past as an engineer is ISO 9241-171, ergonomics of human system interaction. So yeah, we have some design pattern examples as well. So if you're looking for an accessible design for a comma box or a select element or a slider or anything like that, that's where you would want to look. We have some assistive technology information, a lot of testing tools here. So I've kind of broken them up into contrast testing tools, web accessibility testing tools, some mobile accessibility testing tools. We even have some desktop testing tools, and then some developer tools for CI and CD integrations. So a lot of really technical stuff here. Some of it's higher level than others. Some good Bitcoin specific resources, blogs and reading. The presentation that I did at CSUN here. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. And just for fun at the end, we have a couple of games that you can play to learn about keyboard accessibility and learn about different types of disabilities. So if you are new to accessibility, I recommend checking out one of these games first, and it'll give you a new perspective. All right. Any other questions from anyone today? I think we're 1 minute over. Cool. Going once? Going twice? All right. We'll go ahead and close it out. Christoph, if you don't mind turning off the recording.